Good afternoon. Welcome to our Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources work session. Today is Monday, July 29th, 2024. We have a number of items on the agenda, all important and interesting items. By way of introductions, my name is John Kafalis. Last time I looked, I'm the commissioner from District 1, joined by my colleague, Commissioner Stevens from District 2, and for the public's sake, Commissioner Shattuck McNally is not present, in part because she's in the voluntary evacuation area. The county is dealing with a wildfire west of Sylvandale Ranch and up in the Storm Mountain area, I believe. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to Lesli, and I'm sure you know the routine.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Lesli Ellis, Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Director. And we do have a full agenda today, and our hearts obviously go out to those who are evacuating and in the midst of that. And Rebecca is actually helping with some of that, so we'll take her item off. That's item number 4. Our first 2 items here involve Dalen and Megan from Natural Resources, and those will be quick updates, and then the bulk of our time we anticipate working with you on the transportation funding topic, so we'll move to that after. With no further ado, I'll pass it along to Dalen. Thank you, Dalen.
Thank you. Dalen Figgs, Director for Larimer County's Department of Natural Resources. And today I want to very quickly go through an update on NoCo. NoCo Place is a regional planning initiative we're part of. And the reason I wanted to provide this update today is I'll be bringing forward a resolution in the near future, sort of adopting the concepts of the Recreation and Vision Plan that I'll be speaking to today. And so, as a reminder, the participating public agencies consist of 2 federal agencies, 1 state, and 5 counties. It's a unique situation for regional planning in this area, really with a focus on how do we maintain this recreational base while still protecting the conservation values, the landscape we enjoy. Again, kind of a map now of the NoCo region, and again, the participating partners, and there's jurisdictions shown on the map. And so this particular product we produced called the Conservation and Recreation Vision was really the concepts adopted by all 8 partners and really guiding our practices going forward, both with how do we manage sort of decisions around recreational access, how do we manage decisions around maintaining conservation and cultural values of our properties. I'm going to speak to that in a little bit more detail, but it really is the work that is a culmination of about 2 years to 3 years worth of efforts. I'm going to step through what those efforts are that brought us to this point. So developing this vision really began with a conservation snapshot, and this was using data within the Colorado Natural Heritage Program and really understanding not just what the conservation values are of the landscape, but sort of the distribution of those values. We know some areas have a higher ecological value than others, for example, and if you were to want to build a recreational development, probably a pretty good spot to avoid in some cases. We also have some visitation data, and I'll show you a map laying these 2 together. Understanding kind of how people use this landscape was important to us. We purchased a bunch of mobile phone data and looked at some of our highest use properties to understand where people were coming from to get there, but also how they were spreading across the property. So again, much like conservation values, people recreate very differently, and so we wanted to know where they were going on the properties as well as just the number of people going there. And then we took all that information and did some pretty extensive stakeholder input across all types of organizational groups, whether they're recreation-based or conservation-based, community-based. We really wanted to get input from that stakeholder group. Again, key mapping resources we also brought in that were a little bit different than CNHP, and that is the Nature Conservancy Resilient and Connected Landscape Map. They do a lot of work around climate change and finding movement patterns that resources can take advantage of. predominantly wildlife resources. And then telling the story, we created a really nice story map that you can go to nocoplaces.com and access. But it tells a story of all of this in a really interactive way. And then finally, this shared philosophy that was generated from all of this work, we are where we are today, and it is really adopting these key management philosophies as we move forward. And this will influence management plans, operational plans, and sort of how we work together with our 8 participating agencies. So this is an example of some of the information that we've collected over the years. And this map, the deeper the blue toward purple are the highest conservation values. So you can see Larimer County has tremendous resource values that remain, which we all know that's why we love living here. The blue, or the green blocks is where the mobile phone data was collected from. And again, as it moves from yellow to red, those are highest densities of people. And again, you can see that where people tend to congregate as they move through these landscapes. Our property included in this was Devil's Backbone, Horsetooth Reservoir, Horsetooth Mountain, and Red Mountain. And you can see very different levels of use, where Horsetooth Reservoir is predominantly just a big yellow spot on the map, and Red Mountain is much more sparse use. But it also kind of, again, provides a bit more detail than we didn't have in the past. In the stakeholder engagement, we had about 140 participants in that, and you can see the grouping that we used in these conversations. I won't read through them, but it was a pretty extensive effort that took a lot of time, and it was a lot of fun conversations. We learned a lot from having these conversations with the stakeholder groups, and really helped us inform this conservation recreation vision. And we built that vision around sort of desired future conditions. And I won't, again, read this, and I provided some detail in the remaining slides for the sake of time I probably won't touch on. But it really starts with ecosystems, really these landscapes and biodiversity that we want these to be connected and resilient. That's a future condition we strive for. Experiences, again, outdoor opportunities of really high quality. We want to make sure that we maintain that. Sustainability, stewardship, really where we have the messaging to people where they understand how to care for the resources along with our staffs. And diversity. We want to make sure outdoors is available to everyone of all types, all physical abilities, everything. And so we work hard on that. And then last, collaboration. Because of this partnership, which is pretty unique, we want to maintain that. Because we know decisions we make will affect how people recreate not only in Larimer County, but if we displace someone, they're going to go to one of the other jurisdictions. We really don't want to do that without understanding the consequences of it. And so this is really, the concept of this resolution is really adopting these key outcomes, sort of summarized here, and then again, detailed more in the following graphs that I won't spend much time on. But you can see really statements around ecosystems and the other 5 remaining sort of bullet items that we want to maintain and adhere to. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, we'll be bringing forward a resolution. I know that was fairly quick. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Thank you, Dalen. Before we check in with Commissioner Stevens, Megan, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Stevens, do you have questions, comments, observations?
I don't think I have any questions. I appreciate that you presenting this. I'm, certainly very supportive and look forward to supporting the resolution that you bring forward. I think we always had these values, but it's great that our partners do too, and that we're committing to that. So I think that we always talk about how important regional work is, and this is clearly regional work. So yeah, I thank you for your work, and I think this is, it's just good to state our values and have our partners state those same values. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Who's that? Is that?
This is Commissioner Shad McNally.
Oh, yes. Hello, Commissioner Shattuck McNally. Yes, you have questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment, please. It's been really a pleasure to work all these years with Dalen and the NoCo Places group. They're a very dedicated group of individuals. We'd like to mention the wonderful article in the Denver Post talking about the work together. At our recent meeting, Galen Fix was highlighted and gave a lot of accolades to for his work at the state level and in the executive committee and the expertise he's provided. And I'm really proud that he works for Larimer County, and I just wanted to make that statement and thank him for all his work. And I'm extremely supportive of this and look forward to this resolution. Thank you, Dalen. And
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So I also want to say thank you. Good work from, I think we've been at this for quite a number of years, and a lot of good outcomes. I don't have any other comments, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
We have one other topic. We can't seem to get the,
Duplicate the screen. I think it's using an extended.
okay.
Oh,
Try FNFE. Function FE.
There we go. Man,
Okay.
it's nice to have an engineer in the room. There you go, Megan. Thank you, Mark.
All right, Megan Flanagan with the Natural Resources Department. And Dalen and I wanted to bring to you today a parcel that's part of the State Land Board, which is in Larimer County. A lot of the Section 16 and 36 portions of the county that were set aside at statehood that generate dollars for schools. And you can go ahead to the next one. And the one we're looking at is right in the center, right to the west of our recent acquisition, the Blue Mountain property. And this is within our Blue Mountain Conservation Area, within our Open Lands Master Plan. And it's this parcel right here, if you can see the cursor. Oh, no, it's not showing up. But it's smack dab labeled State Land Board in the center there. And you can see from this map how there's a lot of other conserved lands within this region that this ties into and creates a buffer both to county open space, U.S. Forest Service to the west. It's in proximity to a number of conservation easements shown in the orangish brown color. And the Stewardship Trust was set up a number of years ago as part of the State Land Board, where they can keep up to $300,000 acres maximum within this designation at any time. But throughout the year, they accept nominations for additional parcels so that if parcels leave that designation, they can refill the bucket, if you will. What qualifies parcels for Stewardship Trust designation is high natural resource values, scenic values, or cultural values. And in the past, we as a county have nominated a State Land Board parcel adjacent to Pinewood Reservoir and Ramsey Shockey Open Space, also within this Blue Mountain Conservation Area, and that was accepted within the trust. Last year, the county sent in a letter of support for a parcel up next to Red Mountain Open Space that is sort of in that queue waiting until some lands leave to be put in, but it was accepted as qualifying. So given our recent acquisition of the Blue Mountain parcel and our ongoing work in this area, we want to nominate what's called the Bear Track parcel. That's what it's been designated. Of note, what makes it qualifying is there are some imperiled plant communities that have been identified by the Natural Heritage Program in this area. It's a parcel that shows up as that dark, dark purple on the map Dalen showed. There's also a rare butterfly that is only found in a couple areas of the county that's known habitat. And then, of course, the scenic value just being within this area that I think a lot of us have spent time down near Flatiron Reservoir and Carter Lake. So we have a request for a letter of support for the nomination that we'll put on consent agenda for your consideration. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Megan. Commissioner Stevens, do you have any questions or comments?
No, just, it seems like a good space. Did you say that there were a couple different plant varieties that were there that are of value too?
Yeah, there's two rare plant communities, and they're not going to sound rare to all of us in the room because we see them commonly here within parts of Larimer County. So it's ponderosa pine. It is an overstory with mountain mahogany and then a couple different grasses in that understory. But that community really is it's a relictual community that was here before a lot of development and things have removed it. It's in really great condition, and it's really only found in a band at that elevation. We have it at Chimney Hollow Open Space as well.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Well, yes, again, very supportive of this. Look forward to seeing it on the consent agenda, and thank you for identifying that property.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, if you're on, would you like to offer a question or comment? So thank you. When can we expect this? Which consent agenda? Is it on for tomorrow?
It's on for tomorrow. Yes.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kudos to Dalen and your team. Great work. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll shift gears now to Mark Peterson and his team. And while he's getting plugged in, I think the work before you is certainly a team effort with Mark and engineers in our engineering department, our consultants, and Bill is also here from the attorney's office, and Tracy Hines has worked with us as well on some of the ballot language. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I've got a couple quick overviews slides. There we go. So we last met with you and had a conversation in May on the topic of sustainable transportation funding and a potential ballot item. We're back to give an update on what's happened since that time, and then actually presuming that we're still continuing to consider this and move forward. We do have draft ballot language and draft resolution language, and then we can talk about the schedule and next steps and where we go from here. So we are seeking input today on the language around this and any other feedback that you have about the project. We have been meeting recently with our partners in municipalities around the county. We've met with all but one. We still have one to schedule. We've also met with North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization staff, as well as CSU, and then we're meeting with the Chambers of Commerce, and we actually have an upcoming meeting with the Fort Collins Chamber next week that we had hoped to schedule before this, but we'll give you an update on that next time we meet with you. And what we're hearing from our partners is that they understand the needs that the county has around transportation funding. I think that the increment that we've proposed for a potential ballot initiative is small enough that it doesn't compete with some of the other interests and projects that are happening in the region. We did hear from Loveland at the staff level a little bit higher level of concern about their potential ballot initiative. Fort Collins also is extending their street maintenance sales tax on the ballot, but they didn't see this as being a challenge or a competing issue necessarily with that particular item. As I mentioned too, the Chamber is having a discussion with their membership on August 8th, and we've been invited to come and present to them and talk to them about potentially moving forward in some form of sponsorship around this item. So that is still ahead of us. If you go to the next one. Okay, so I'm going to pass it along to Mark at this point, and we'll share with you some of the information we've put together that is available online, and you have a copy of this as well, but I think we have some really helpful information to tell the story about Larimer County and what our needs are and what the funding could potentially cover if voters, if this goes on the ballot, if it should pass, and then we'll move into the draft ballot language. So I'll pass it along to Mark. Thank you, Mark.
All right, so good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Peterson, Engineering Director here for the county. What you have is in the format of 2 pages, or 2 slides per page, excuse me, is a flipping book that's on the county's website. It's 17 pages in total, and it tries to lay out, and it's been used when we've met with the community members, but it's also out available for anybody who accesses the website to go through it and gain more background and understanding of why we're pursuing transportation funding here. And so I'll just step through the slides fairly quickly. We can send you the PDF file if you want it. Certainly you can go to the county's webpage as well and see it there. But, you know, it's laying out the need that even with decades of responsible budget management, we have needs that far exceed available resources. So that's what's leading us to consider a sales tax measure on this November's ballot. In terms of where our funding sources right now, just in terms of general services and including transportation, it's obviously property tax grants, sales tax, and service charges. We tried to define for anybody what out of property tax on a single-family home valued at $600,000, when you break it down, Larimer County doesn't get to keep but a portion of that, and what goes to Road and Bridge after shareback amounts to $9. So that's what's coming from property tax right now towards the Road and Bridge Department to be used on maintenance and in very limited fashions, any kind of improvement on the county road system. The next slide just attempts to let everybody know that from a sales tax perspective, everything we get from Larimer County that comes into Larimer County is all dedicated. It's open lands, behavioral health, the jail, or the fairgrounds. So really currently no sales tax dollars in Larimer County go towards maintaining or improving county roads. Our roads do provide very vital connections for communities and residents. And, you know, we have nearly 800 miles of mainline roads that we're maintaining and we're responsible for. Yet another over 100 miles of subdivision roads. And it's really providing access between communities and access to recreation on the whole western portion of Larimer County. This slide is an attempt to give it some context and look at County Road 23 and 38E and their heavy use by people accessing Horsetooth Reservoir and areas to the west. When you looked at the data, about 83% of the trips on 38E originate from one of the county's 8 municipalities, so that improvements on 38E, you know, serve to benefit everyone, basically. And you have a lot of visitors and tourists coming in and using those road systems as well. So when it comes to funding for maintenance, we tried in this slide to identify and differentiate for people what's considered maintenance and what's considered improvements, just so they'd have some understanding of what that is. And to note that our average cost to maintain the road system is around $22 million. So the bulk of the money that's coming into Road and Bridge is going for maintenance. And there's a pretty limited amount of funding that we try to combine with grants, transportation capital expansion fees, and really any other source of revenue that we can lay our hands on to make improvements to the county road system out there. We're also faced with being a very popular place to both live and visit, and so we're growing pretty dramatically. It's expected that our population will exceed 490,000 people by 2050. And this figure was a graphical representation of the interconnectedness that's occurring between our communities. Trips, you know, from Wellington into and out of Fort Collins, a vast majority, a high percentage of the people, and in most of the smaller communities, it's a very high majority of people are leaving that community to work someplace else. Transportation improvements are pretty expensive. It's somewhere between $1 and $4 million to improve an intersection, put in a signal or a roundabout. We estimate that it's about $5 million per mile for safety and bicycle pedestrian improvements along a roadway where you've got to widen it from its existing platform. $1 to $5 million to put in a major bridge structure, and $3 million per mile to pave a gravel road. And when I say $5 million per mile for safety and bicycle pedestrian improvements, that's in a more rural setting. If you start to talk about an urban level improvement, costs go up dramatically. If you go back to our 2017 Transportation Master Plan, we had identified the needs relative to the existing funding. We had also broken it down into higher priority and medium priority projects. And so this was an attempt to kind of characterize the level of funding we have from our existing funding sources relative to the projected needs. And these are all 2017 dollars. Those numbers will go up as the new Transportation Master Plan is revisited and revised here. Dedicated funding source would allow us to address a wide range of priority transportation needs. And these are sort of produced in order of what we heard back from the polling in terms of needs that are out there. People are very focused on safety, and we are as well. That's always one of the highest priority considerations we make when we're looking at a project. But you look at intersections, improving signal timing, improving capacity, that's a good way to address both safety needs as well as movement. Adding sidewalks, crossing improvements for pedestrians, adding bike lanes. There's a need to widen existing roads and bridges, not from the standpoint so much of adding another travel lane, but adding width to the platform to get in bikeable shoulders or walkable shoulders. Improving access to transit and then maintaining our system as well. And these are some of the benefits. It's, looking at the needs to address housing, access to housing, emergency response, dealing with traffic congestion, again, safety, mobility, access to recreation, improving supporting the economy and economic development, and addressing environmental issues. This is actually a list of projects that were identified in the polling that was done. It's looking at project needs related to safety and mobility, bridges, and intersection. It's pretty hard to see. I apologize. I don't know what my computer's doing when it's refreshing here, but when you put projects on a county-wide map, even when you attempt to blow it up on the right-hand side, they still show up as pretty small segments of roadway or dots. But these are a variety of needs that are out there. Some of them are, connections on 17 and 19 between Loveland and Fort Collins, for example, a major regional connection. County Road 9, which is Giddings. We're seeing more and more traffic coming down out of Wellington and into Fort Collins, and if and when Montava starts to develop, that will just, boom out there on that part. So those are just examples of projects that are they're not all in our capital improvements plan, because this goes far beyond what we have the ability to fund in our existing capital improvements plan. But there are projects that come out of our transportation master plan and assessments of safety needs and intersection capacity needs that are out there. And the last slide is really to try to identify, if we don't get additional funding for transportation improvements, what does that mean? And it really, the cost of road and bridge maintenance and capital improvements continues to climb. Our purchasing power decreases every year. And it would impact, obviously, our ability to continue to make progress on meeting and addressing these needs that are out there. And it would affect our ability to have seed money. That's another major potential source, is seed money to go after federal grants that almost always require a 20% match or more. A lot of times you have to overmatch to make your grant competitive. So it would affect our abilities to pursue those. And a lot of times those are potentially partnership projects with other entities to address the needs that are out there. And we just have a commitment to transparency and, getting back to the community.
All right, thank you. Actually, if we could show that schedule slide too, that might be helpful, and then we'll move into the
Yeah, that was
ballot. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we go ahead one slide and then we'll come back. So just to explain what needs to happen as we move forward potentially to put this on the ballot, and I'm sure you're well aware, commissioners, and for others who may be interested too. We're here today. We have a meeting with the chamber folks in a week or so, and then we'll be back for another work session with you all to report on that and finalize ballot language. We will be sending our ballot language to the Department of Revenue today, but they look at the parts that aren't necessarily the policy parts that are more tax related. And then we'll, if we move forward after the 12th, then we'll finalize the ballot and resolution language on the 20th and bring it to you at admin matters on the 27th so that we can meet our deadline to get it to the clerk. So that would be what's ahead if we move forward. I think we'd like to shift gears and move into the resolution and the ballot language. We can take questions if you have any questions on the items that you've seen so far or feedback on those items, and then we'll shift gears and maybe show you a couple of the ballot language options that we have.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Stevens, before we get into the discussion about ballot language, do you have any questions or comments? I suspect.
I just have some short comments. So I appreciate this presentation and how it's been presented. So I think makes a very compelling case of why we need these dollars. I bet people didn't know that only $9 of their total property tax went. I'm not even sure I knew that exact number. But that's a very small amount considering how much people use these roads. And like you said, I think commuting and getting to our beloved recreational areas is a lot of what, people maybe who live in the municipalities, do on these roads. We do have a sales tax for open space, but not a sales tax that helps us get to our open spaces. And so, that I always say that, when I've heard people complain about road construction, I always say, well, imagine if you couldn't do your construction. And we've all been in communities, and we all have been on roads where, frankly, we know that they need to be repaired. And so, telling the community that, yes, we do need these dollars, and this is why we need them. We're not getting these, much from the federal government. We don't get much from the state. To take care of our roads, and yet we're responsible for roads that are very, very highly traveled. And so I just appreciate the work that you've done here. I'm certainly extremely supportive of passing this tax and getting people to understand why we need this tax. And I think, like I said, I think this slide deck is very well done and really makes the case. And I like the idea that you're spelling out how much some of these projects cost. I bet people didn't know that it was, even a small bridge that you barely even realize is a bridge costs at least $1 million. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is Commissioner Shattuck McNally with us? Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate a great report. I lost internet, so as you probably understand where I'm at. So if I could get the slide deck sent to me anyway, that would be great. I do have the ballot language in front of me, and I just want to thank Mark and Leslie and the team for a very, as Commissioner Stevens stated, compelling presentation and reasons, the big why. And I certainly understand living in unincorporated Larimer County about county road maintenance, or actually doing mountain maintenance in front of my house right now, some chip seal. And so it's kind of interesting. We're having this discussion and I'm watching the big county trucks and all the workers work in this heat in front of my house. So I am certainly supportive of this, and I appreciate the update. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't, at this time, maybe offline we could chat a little bit, Leslie, but I don't have anything else to add by way of question or comments. I do agree with both of the comments of my commissioner colleagues. I do have a few more insights, but maybe we could have a chance to chat about that sometime down the road. No pun intended. Let's move on to the,
Okay.
oh, Lorinda, is there anything, gosh, you often have insights that we miss.
I just wanted to compliment the work. This flip book, I think, does tell the complete story. And I hope that the public understands that while they hear all these federal funds are available for things like transportation, if you can't put up the matching funds, you can't draw those to your community. And so this is really, I think you make the case, it's a really important effort for our community to be able to draw those funds in and to be able to create these projects without some other funding source. You know, that's just not going to be possible. So I think you do tell the story in a very neutral educational way, which is an interesting line to walk. You all have done a great job with this.
Thank you, Lorinda. Let's move on to a discussion about the proposed ballot language.
Okay, great. So we do have two options, and you received draft copies of those in advance. These, of course, are wide open for comments at this point, and we could, pull some elements from one into the other if there are things that you like. Excuse me. The first option is a bit longer and has more detail in it. The second option is a bit shorter, and the detail lives in the accompanying resolution. And so, Mark, if you'd like to just share that, and Bill and Tracy, feel free to come up if you'd like to join us for this part of the conversation too. Bill's been very helpful, and Tracy as well, and consulting with us and guiding us in terms of the elements that we need to include and should include, and how to make these legible and tell the story. The resolution now does try to follow the story that's put forward in the flip book in terms of our purpose and reason for doing this, so you'll see some similar components there. And then the ballot language, I believe, includes the components that it needs to include, as well as being descriptive of the project. So, Mark, I'll pass it along to you.
So we've got what's been termed option A and option B. You actually have two copies of those. I think we sent the first one through. The only thing that changed is we put a draft watermark, across the middle of the page in terms of what we printed out the second time around. This is the longer version. It goes into a little more explanation of the types of project work via bullet points. So I think both versions have pretty much exactly the same opening sentences here in terms of the increase of up to $17,200,000 annually, tied to a tax measure that exists for 15 years and imposes a tax of 0.15%, which parenthetically is identified as 15 cents on $100, just to remind people percentages. Different people have different views of what that equates to. It is a sales and use tax, and its purpose is to improve safety on and along roads, bridges, other transportation infrastructure, increasing maintenance of such infrastructure, and improving efficiency and operation of transportation infrastructure, including vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle, and other multimodal means of transportation in Larimer County. And then it's including but not limited to, and then there are 5 bullet points here covering sort of a range of possibilities tied to safety for pedestrians and bicyclists and making improvements in intersections along roadways. Again, addressing just transportation infrastructure in general, addressing the need for resilience, which we've seen after repetitive natural disasters in our county, increasing access or supporting increased access to community transit services and other mobility options, and then improving travel corridors between the communities. If we go to the other version, well, I guess maybe stop and we can ask if there are any questions about language in here.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Stevens, thoughts at this point? No. Any observations, perhaps?
I mean, and just looking at these two, I can read the one with the bullet points better. And I don't know if we've done any, because like I'm not, now this is shorter, and shorter sometimes is better, but for, this breaks up the text a little bit, and I think that that is valuable, and really talks about those projects. I would say any polling that we've done, I would put them in bulleted order as people have identified them. So whatever we heard most important in the polling, I'd put that first, make that the first bullet point. That's just instinct though. Like, I don't know if you did any, like what people who study this kind of stuff say that people are looking at, but those are my impressions, is that while this is more concise, I see that many words together and I start, I think people are used to things being broken up because of the way we read now, especially online. And so to me, those are my first impressions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Shaddock McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to echo Commissioner Stevens' comments as I look at this in front of me. And I think that one other thing I'd just like to add is the option B, yes, one big paragraph, but I think when we break it off in the bullet points, people might see that better than reading the whole, the paragraph. But I pretty much echo what Commissioner Stevens said. Thanks.
I believe it's my turn. Yes, upon quick review, I would lean towards what has been stated. I think more detail is important. I think plain language is important. I'm assuming you'll correct at least one typo that I've noticed. But that said, that's all I have. And again, Lesli, maybe if we're scheduled to have a conversation at some point, I could offer some more feedback. Lorenda, anything you'd like to add, please?
My thoughts were along the same line as yours. I think after reading the first line of a ballot question, people will often, it's all capital letters, it's really hard to follow, it's a big block of words. The bullets do seem to divide it into what am I actually going to get if this happens, if this goes through. And I love your idea of doing the sort of in the order of polling results, because I think that does appeal to the most people. Clearly, we learned that. So this is, you're able to tell the story about the kind of things that can be done, I think, in a way that is both builds a box around what can be done with the sales tax, but also doesn't create ratios or doesn't make you do things in a prescribed way within that box. Because from year to year, grants will come that may really focus on one area as opposed to another, and it allows you the flexibility of addressing those. So I think you've done a good job here.
If I could comment, we did try to generally put those bullets in order of priority. Safety is the number one priority from the polling. Resilience, which is bullet number 3, was people responded to that, or that was important to them. And the second bullet kind of covers our ability to make improvements and do maintenance on all types of infrastructure out there. And then the last bullet is really trying to, again, focus on the fact that it is providing regional connectivity and, travel between communities.
Thank you. Is that the direction at this stage that you wanted, or something more detailed or comprehensive?
I think that's helpful at this stage. As we mentioned before in the schedule, we still have several weeks to finalize this. So if you have other thoughts, even in the next week or so, and want to share them, we can take those in. It might be helpful if, since we have a little bit of time, to share the resolution language with you and see if you have any thoughts on that so that we can further refine that as well as we work for the next couple of weeks.
And in the interest of helping the folks who drafted this the ballot language, on option A, bullet number 3, check the spelling of resilience. And I'm sure it's just a silly typo, and we'd clean everything up, of course.
Oh, we got that.
Do we want to hear anything from our county attorney or Tracy from the sales tax office?
The only thing I'll add, Commissioners, Bill Rasu, Larimer County Attorney, is that the longer form ballot question, another way to potentially shorten that one is that on the end of it, there's reference to an annual report, and that's a number of lines. And so we might be able to do a combination of the short form and the long form and be more descriptive in bullet points in a shorter form, but then reference the annual report in the resolution itself rather than muddying up the ballot question. So I think we can combine these maybe to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yes, Commissioner, of course.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I mean, we know this is going to be a long ballot. So, but I do think it's important to have those bullet points, because a lot of times if you're just reading the first sentence and then you're dropping down to the bullet points, if there's no bullet points to drop down to and you just read the first sentence, you're like, what the heck are they going to do with all this money? I like that, that question gets answered. Do we know how long the ballot's going to be? Do we know placement of where this might pop up in the ballot? Are there any?
We'd have to get that information from the clerk's office, so it's possible that we could have that for the next conversation we have.
Yeah,
with
it's
you.
more curiosity, honestly, than anything. I think that whoever takes on this as, the campaign's maybe not the right word, but whoever kind of takes this on as their issue and pushes this forward, a lot of that language needs to probably be around voting your whole ballot and, that kind of thing, because I think that people are going to see a ballot that might be the size of which they've never seen before. And that's always your fear, is that gets that things get buried and people just get ballot fatigue and they stop voting. I think that the bullet points help with that as well too, because it kind of, it's more striking in a way. It adds some visual kind of interest in that I think is lost in just sort of a block of text. So, and there again, this is all just my own thinking. I know so much about this topic when I could be dead wrong, but I feel, at least from my own personal opinion, that's how I would feel about seeing that on the ballot, is like, oh yeah, it's long, but there must be something to this.
Just one more comment before we might try to offer one comment here. In terms of readability, I don't know if it's the way it's justified, it's not left justified. I don't know if it's required to be this way. And in terms of readability, I'm not sure if left justified or the way it is better. I don't know. But I just wanted to point that out.
We'll aim to make it as readable as we can, given the constraints of the ballot.
I imagine so, yes. Okay. Let's move on then. Would you like to talk about the resolution a little bit?
Yes, so The resolution, there's really two parts of it that would be helpful to share with you and get your feedback on. A lot of it is more technical and related to the taxing mechanisms. But the first part, the resolution set out the purpose and reason for this ballot initiative. And as mentioned before, these generally follow the information that was presented in the flip book and the reasons and justification and need for this. We can probably just sort of scroll through that fairly quickly to see if you have any, if anything pops out as, out of place or maybe missing or that could be phrased better. And so that's the first part of the resolution. Later on in the resolution, there's then a section that helps articulate the types of projects and the accountability measures and that sort of thing that we've talked about as well. So we can stop in the in the whereas section if there's any feedback or questions that you have about that section, and then we can move on to the later section. And then Bill and Tracy, feel free to chime in if there's anything else that would be worth highlighting at this stage for awareness.
Commissioner Stevens, any thoughts at this time?
No, I mean, I like that it does follow sort of it lays out the case, which I think is really important. I don't have any comments right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Shattuck McNally?
And at this time, I do think all the points are well taken, and I look forward to the update.
Anything?
I'm sure it's captured in one of these whereases, but I think it's important that we make it very clear that this is a regional approach, and the connectivity issue, it's not about Fort Collins, for example. So I think those are lessons learned from the behavioral health ballot measure, and I think it's probably spelled out in there.
Yes,
That's the only comment I would add. And then Bill's suggestion perhaps about the report thing, maybe taking it out of the ballot language and perhaps putting it in the resolution somewhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's move to the next part, and this might be a good, if you'd like to just describe briefly what the context of this next section is.
Sure.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
So the first part of the resolution is really the county telling its story for why this tax is being requested and what the money will be used for. The next section in the resolution, it starts with a section 1 through 20-some sections. The majority of those sections spell out the operational sales tax provisions. A lot of that is mandated by state statute, and we describe what the tax will apply to for the sales tax, and then we do the same thing for the use tax and describe what it will apply to, what it won't apply to, how it will be collected, and things of that nature. Further down in the resolution, I believe it's section 9, the board will set the text that will appear on the ballot. So that's the language that we've been talking about. That's reflected in the body of the resolution. Right now, we just have a placeholder. So that will be populated with the text that will actually go on the ballot. The sections after that provide further description of the purpose for which this use will be used. And this is where the county can refer to the annual report. It can refer to the various purposes that the sales tax and use tax will be used for. So this is, again, another opportunity to include that description. Through the end of the resolution, again, are more procedural sales tax provisions that talk about collection, how it's remitted from the businesses that collect it. And then I believe attached will be one of the slideshow. Were you going to attach as Exhibit A, Mark? One of the...
I don't know why it didn't get in here.
Yeah. So at the end of Mark's slideshow, there was a document that described, it was a chart essentially that described the various, I don't know if you can see it, it's investing in transport. So that would be attached as an exhibit to, again, provide people reading through the resolution as much detail as they want about how the revenue would be spent. So that's the framework of the resolution in a nutshell. I would say 85% of it is kind of boilerplate statutory sales tax provisions. So it's a little boring to read through the whole thing, but the beginning really is what tells the story.
Thank you, Bill. That's very helpful. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Stevens, any thoughts as we approach the adjournment?
No, I think this is, I think this is great. As Bill is saying, I think that a lot of that is sort of what we're statutorily obligated to say. We did get Exhibit A, we just didn't get it attached to the, but it's fine. But I liked that we're attaching that too, because I think really that calls out specific areas that we have heard that need to be fixed or fixed and maintained. And, I think that level of detail is important when you're asking for sales tax. So I'm glad that we'll have that in the resolution. Otherwise, I think it looks great. Like I said, I appreciate that we're making the case here and then explaining to people how we're going to spend those dollars. But as Lorenda said, not no percentages, because I do think that it can vary. It can vary, I mean, for a variety of reasons, including, there's an emergency situation in an area and we need to start spending dollars in that area. So I'm glad we called out emergencies too, because I think as we had an evacuation today, and we know that evacuating an area is really important, and keeping those roads up for those kind of purposes is a big piece of resiliency. So, no, well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Zedek McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to remember this, but I agree with a lot what Commissioner Stevens stated. But you've heard me say before, if we're not telling our story, someone else might, and they may not want that, may not be telling the story we want told. And I think this is really well done. I think a lot of people will not understand how many miles and roads and bridges. I think it's really good numbers to put in there and to kind of share the depth and breadth of this issue. And so I think this is really well done. I want to thank you all for the job well done. And I'll read through it again, but I don't see anything that really sticks out for me. And I think we've had a lot of experience with successful ballot language. We know what the lessons learned. And so I'm really glad we're sure percentages and certain things we don't want to fall into that challenge again. So I think this is well done, and I'm going to read through it again, but I'm looking at it right now, and I appreciate the diligence and details, and just thank you all.
Thanks, Commissioner. In light of the time, I will reserve my additional thoughts for a conversation offline. Lorenda, would you like to wrap this up with some pearl of wisdom?
Thank you for moving this forward. I know the decision has not yet been made, but because of the timeline, it requires us to act in a certain way and be prepared so that the board could make a decision in time and things can be on the ballot in an appropriate way. So thank you for your work there. I've got a couple of comments. I'll just give them to you afterward.
Thank you, Lorenda. Thank you, colleagues. Is there anything else, Leslie or Mark?
There's not. Thank you all very much for your comments.
Therefore, at 2:30, we are adjourned.